Do you know what time it is? It's supernatural story time. And if you're easily scared, and even if you're not, there's only one thing left to do. Just turn off the lights, because these are stories that you listen to only in the dark. Dark House Stories, Volume 3, Story Number 1. I was driving through rural New Jersey when I saw him. A hitchhiker, standing by the side of the road, surprisingly well dressed, black suit, slick back hair, narrow briefcase. Now, I know I shouldn't pick up hitchhikers, but I'm 6'4", 230 pounds with all kinds of hunting equipment in the back of my truck. It's not like this prissy-ass businessman is going to beat me to death and leave me on the side of the road. Besides, I need gas money. "Hey man," I said, pulling over to the side of the road. "I'll give you a lift if you pay me for gas." "Of course," he said, in a polite, almost British accent. He reached for his wallet and pulled out 3 crisp $20 bills. "This enough?" I grinned. "That's way more than enough." I greedily snatched the money from him and clicked the locks. "Get in, bud." He climbed in. His blue eyes shifted from the crumpled Wendy's wrapper on the dashboard to the mysterious sticky goo on the middle console. "Sorry, the car's not clean. I'm going hunting," I said, turning back onto the highway. "Hunting? Interesting," he said, in a strangely enthusiastic tone. "Have you always liked to hunt?" "No. It's the funniest thing. Never thought I'd ever hunt. Love animals. Got 3 dogs at home. But there are so many deer around these parts. When the winter comes, a lot of them starve to death. Not to mention all the car accidents they cause." I trailed off, and we fell into uncomfortable silence. "Just hunting for the day, then?" "No, my buddy Matt and I will be out there the whole weekend." He let out a laugh. "The whole weekend? Your wife's a saint for letting you go." "My wife? How did he—" But then my eyes fell on the steering wheel and the silver ring on my finger. Yeah. Mary's a doll. She's actually pregnant, 5 months with a little girl." He gave me a crooked smile. "A little girl, huh?" "Yeah." I could feel him staring at me long after we had fallen into silence. It made me feel uncomfortable. I clicked on the radio. "How did you meet Matt?" he asked, fiddling with the dial. All that came through was static. That's a weird question, I thought. He and Mary were close friends, so when we got married, I got to know him well." The man said. He stroked his chin thoughtfully, and I was suddenly reminded of a psychiatrist. "Are you a psychiatrist?" I blurted out. He laughed. "Definitely not. I work in finance." "What type of finance?" It was my turn to ask the questions now. "Futures," he replied noncommittally. I glanced over at him. A small smile was on his lips, and I noticed his fingers had gravitated from his lap to the briefcase at his feet. My heart began to pound. Click, click. He undid the clasp. The case creaked open. "What's in your briefcase?" I asked. "Work." "What kind of—" His long fingers disappeared into the darkness of the case. He was pulling something out. My body began to seize up. The steering wheel felt like ice under my fingers. "I have a lot of hunting equipment back there," I said, "so you better not be—" I stopped. He was pulling out only a sheet of paper. For a few minutes he was quiet, reading the paper intently and silently, as if his life depended on it. Scratch, scratch. His fingers slid over it as they traced the text. Then he slipped it back into the case and snapped it shut. What was he reading? I thought, but before I could get the question out, he turned towards me. I could barely see his face in my peripheral vision, but I knew he was staring at me for minutes on end. Then he broke the silence. "Don't go hunting," he said, his ice blue eyes boring into me. "What?" "Turn the car around. Go home to Mary." "What?" "She needs you." He paused. "Madeline needs you." I paled. I never told him we were going to name our baby Madeline. "How did you—" "He's going to make it look like an accident," he said, his voice gravelly and halting. "Just a simple hunting accident. The most punishment he'll endure is 35 minutes in the police station, writing out his statement. But let me off at that diner up ahead. I like their Cobb salad very much." "Matt's going to kill me?" What are you talking about? He turned to me, eyes wide. What are you talking about? About what you just said. All I said is, I'd like you to let me off at the diner, please. He pointed to the exit curving off the highway. You're going to miss it if you don't slow down. With a shaking hand, I clicked on my blinker, pulled off the exit into the parking lot. My heart pounded in time with the click, click, click of the cooling engine. Thank you for the ride, he said, pulling his briefcase out with him. Have a good drive, will you? I couldn't squeak out a reply before the door slammed shut. I didn't believe him, but my nerves were too shot to continue the trip either. I texted Matt that I was sick, turned around and went home to Mary. Mary was thrilled. Matt was disappointed. A little too disappointed, if you ask me. A month later, after ignoring most of Matt's calls and texts, which became increasingly frequent and desperate, I heard a faint thumping noise at the door. When I flicked on the porch light, there was Matt, hunched over our doorknob, holding a lockpick. We called the police. Since then, life has been great. Just a few months later, our wonderful little Madeline was born, and as soon as we got back from the hospital, on our doorstep was a little teddy bear, a pink bow sewed on its head. There wasn't a return address or a card of any kind, but I think I know who it's from. Story number 2. It's Friday, 4:30 p.m. Just my luck that now I have to deal with this rundown house on top of everything else on my plate. When the lawyer called me saying my aunt had died and left me this house out in the middle of nowhere, I almost refused the offer. Now that I'm sitting inside, I wish I had. I'm on the couch in the living room right now, listening to the drip of the rusty pipes and the creak of the walls as the house shifts in the breeze. The entire place gives me the creeps, and the Catholic pictures and candles plastering each wall do nothing to assuage the feeling. I don't know why my aunt would leave the place to me of all people. I'd only met her once in my entire life. Well, I have some idea. When my dad passed away, I was probably her last living blood relative. So she probably looked around and knew no one, so she put me down as the inheritor of her incredible fortune. What a joke. A whole $328 in a house that'll cost me more in property taxes than it's worth on the market. I have my psychology dissertation to prepare for, and I just don't have an extra 10 hours a week to deal with all this. At least I have a place to stay rent-free for a few weeks while I work through selling the property. Saturday, 6 p.m. I pulled down most of the more bizarre religious images in the house today and started deep cleaning, only to give up after a few hours. This place needs everything replaced. I might just schedule it for demolition, who knows. The house sits a little under a mile from the highway, and I have to walk along the road for 10 minutes to get up here each time. I could open the gate and drive, but the road leading up here is made of dirt and gravel. I'm worried about the possibility of getting my car stuck if I tried driving it up here, or even worse, scratched. I recorded some of the walk up to the house for my records and to show any potential buyers. Sunday, 11:30 a.m. I think there's an animal problem in this area. Late last night I heard something knocking at my door. It couldn't be a person. I'm way too far away from the road. When I answered the door, there was nothing there. Soon after, I started hearing tapping noises on my window. It's got to be something like a raccoon, or worst case, a bear. I had made some pizza in the oven that night, and they probably just smelled it. Probably. This morning I found my aunt's journal in a drawer. It was hard to read because she kept interrupting herself to reference Bible verses. I think she must have had paranoid schizophrenia because she kept referring to verses about protection from evil. She kept rambling on about how she thought she shouldn't leave the house, stuff like that. It's fascinating how the human mind can just fabricate situations like my aunt's. Apparently, she thought that plastering the walls with religious imagery and candles would protect her from some evil force that was after her. Maybe I should find a way to reference it in my dissertation. I wonder if the thesis committee would go for that. Sunday, 11 p.m. I saw something outside, I think. I'm writing this from my bed and my heart is still beating pretty fast. I'd opened my front door to throw a bag of trash out, and I saw figures standing on a hill 100 feet away. It was dark, but I'm sure I saw it. It looked like the silhouette of a woman dressed all in black. She was facing my direction. When it was clear that I was staring at her, she turned around and walked away. What in the world is going on? Why would a random woman come all the way out here? Sunday, 3:47 a.m. She knew that I didn't know about her. She knew I had torn down most of the pictures. She came into the house. I woke up to the sound of my front door swinging open violently. I thought it might have been the wind, but the back of my mind flashed to the woman from earlier. I'd grabbed my phone to use as a light, but accidentally double-tapped the home button, which opened my camera app. I stumbled into the hallway of the house, walked towards the door. I squeezed the picture button to light up the room with a flash and saw her for the split second. She was standing in the doorway of the house, head cocked to the side, and grinning like a madwoman. She started shambling towards me. I stumbled back and ran out the back of the house. I ran down the road back to my car, cutting my bare feet on the thorns and rocks, and drove until I reached my friend's place, where I'm typing this, still in my sweatpants. I still have the picture I took of her. I'm never going back there. Tomorrow I'm going to call a crew to go demolish the house. Then I'm going to go bury the deed and try to forget this ever happened. Story number 3. When I was 12, I came to the conclusion that everyone in the world, including my own family, was against me. I was never a problem child, but my parents sure treated me like one. For example, I used to need to be home by 5 p.m. every day. This clearly restricted my amount of playtime outdoors. I wasn't allowed to have friends over to play at the house, nor was I allowed to go over anyone else's. I had to finish homework directly after I came home from school, no matter how long it took. My parents refused to buy me video games and forced me to read books and then to write a book report on them to prove I'd actually read it. Now, even though those rules listed above were quite frustrating to me as a child, they aren't what upset me most. What really hurt me was the lack of compassion on behalf of my parents. My mother was a bitter woman who always made me feel guilty of accidents or mistakes I've made. My father only knew one emotion: frustration. The only time he spoke to me was when he screamed at me for receiving poor test scores or beating me for misbehaving. But enough about them. Let's talk about my school psychologist. For his own privacy, we'll call him Dr. Tanner. Like most junior high schools, a psychologist is always available on campus during school hours to assist any students in need of counseling, whether it is emotional, academic, social, behavioral, etc. To be honest, I have never seen any students talking with Dr. Tanner. Every day, I would walk past his office on my way to the cafeteria and peek through the door's little window. He would always be alone in there working on some paperwork. I guess that most kids were too afraid to speak about their problems to an adult who was practically a stranger. For this reason, it took me 3 weeks to muster enough courage to go into his office. March 2nd, 1993 was the day I decided to voice my troubles to Dr. Tanner. During lunch break, I stood in front of his office door and knocked. Through the window, I could see him raise his head, smile, and motion for me to come in. I did. He greeted me by introducing himself and asking for my name. Dr. Tanner was a very soft-spoken man who seemed to radiate kindness. In less than 30 minutes, I rambled to Dr. Tanner about how mean my parents were to me and how they didn't care about me at all. After a while, my voice began to quaver and I stopped speaking. The psychologist listened patiently to my whole spiel, arms folded and head nodding. I half expected him to begin talking about how everything I just said was untrue and that my parents loved me dearly and blah blah blah. But he didn't. Dr. Tanner leaned towards me with a grin on his face and said, "You know, I'm the best school psychologist in the world. I promise we will fix this." I rolled my eyes. "Okay, but how?" I asked. "I have my ways," he replied. "I'm a man of my word. I promise that within just 1 month, the relationship between you and your parents will change for the better, forever." After a brief pause, he continued, "Although, I do need you to make me a promise. You have to promise me that you'll come back to my office after school tomorrow and that you won't tell anyone that we had this conversation today. It'll be our little secret." I promised. The following day I returned to Dr. Tanner after school. It was around 4 p.m. when I entered his office. After a warm welcome, he asked me to have a seat in front of his desk once again. Upon sitting down, I watched Dr. Tanner close the blinds of the door's tiny window. There, he smiled. Now we have all the privacy we need. We began to talk about my likes and interests, my favorite subjects in school, my least favorite teachers, and things of, that type. About an hour into the conversation, Dr. Tanner offered me a soft drink. I gladly took the offer, considering my parents never allowed me to drink soda. Dr. Tanner reached over to his mini fridge and fidgeted about before setting down to open cans of soda on the desk. Afterward, we continued to talk about what was going on in my life, but it wasn't long before I passed out from whatever drugs Dr. Tanner placed in my drink. It took me a minute or so to adjust my blurring vision upon waking, and when it did, I had no idea what to think. I was handcuffed to a bed and my mouth was sealed with duct tape. I immediately began to panic, squirming and tugging at the cuffs, but gave up soon after. My eyes widened in disbelief after looking around the room. There were posters of superheroes pinned up along the walls and photographs of some famous athletes on shelves. In the middle of the room was an old television and Super Nintendo, various game cartridges stacked alongside it. I didn't know what to think. Here I am in a room filled with items most kids would die to play with. I would have probably cried from joy hadn't I been handcuffed to a bed frame. My stomach sank once again as the door opened and Dr. Tanner walked inside. He sat down on the edge of the bed. "Now listen," he said. "Remember that I'm here to help you, and I would never hurt you, okay?" Dr. Tanner gently removed the tape from my mouth and then the cuffs from my hands. My first instinct was to begin crying, but something about Dr. Tanner made me feel safe. He smiled at me. "You're going to be staying here for a while," he continued, "and during this time you're allowed to play with any toys in this room while I'm here at home. But when I leave the house, I'll need to cuff one of your hands back on the bed. You can still watch the television, but I want you to only watch the news channel when I'm away." I sat in silence, still trying to process the information he had given me. "So," Dr. Tanner yipped, slapping me on the knee, "you go ahead and knock yourself out. I'll be back when it's time for dinner." He got up from the bed, walked across the room, and clicked the TV's power button before locking the door behind him. Several more minutes passed before I realized that Dr. Tanner wasn't joking. All that was left for me to do was boot up the Nintendo and play Mario until nightfall. At about 7 p.m., Dr. Tanner returned to the room, carrying 2 plates of mashed potatoes and chicken strips. I finally gathered up the courage to ask him how long I'd be staying in this room. "Well, about a month," he replied, "give or take a few weeks. I just have some work I need to do." The following morning, I awoke to Dr. Tanner's hand patting my head. "Hey, bud, you don't have to wake up right now if you don't want to, but I'm going to need to put this back on," he whispered, clamping the cold steel handcuff onto my wrist. I gazed up at him. He was wearing a collared shirt and slacks, a coat draped over his shoulder, and a suitcase at his side. He looked just how he always did when I saw him around school. Before leaving, he placed the TV's remote next to me and told me to turn it on and watch the news. The first thing I saw upon turning it on was breaking news segment. An important-looking police officer stood at a podium, surrounded by people with microphones. I happened to begin viewing halfway through his speech. "A statewide Amber Alert has been issued as of this morning. We have several investigators working towards identifying potential abductors, but as of right now there is not much evidence. Faculty members state that the boy has been seen last around 4 or 5 in the evening on—" I began to feel nauseous as a photograph of me appeared on the screen. It was my yearbook picture from last year. Captions for the photograph displayed my name and my age, my school, and my town. Above my picture were alternating titles: "FBI begins search for child" and "Kidnapping suspect unknown" and "Potential runaway." The live footage continued, and 2 figures I soon recognized as my mom and dad stepped up to the podium. Both appeared to have reddened eyes. Tears streamed down my mother's face as she took hold of a microphone. I'd never seen so much emotion come from my mother before as she wept on live television, stuttering on sentences such as "Please return my baby back to me," and "I'm so sorry, and please come home to us." When my father took the microphone, I nearly expected his attitude to be stone cold, but he too had tears in his eyes. He pleaded to the world to bring his son home safely, and lastly begged for my forgiveness. "I know I haven't been the best father, but God damn it, I do wish I had been now. Please bring my boy back." I turned the power off shortly. My emotions were mixed, for I had never once seen my father cry. I felt miserable that my parents were being put through so much, but at the same time I felt relief. I now know how much Mom and Dad love me. Nearly 4 weeks have passed, and Dr. Tanner has been treating me with the utmost respect. He leaves me in the morning cuffed to the bed frame, but returns in the afternoon to eat lunch and dinner with me, talk, and play games. I never would have guessed how good Dr. Tanner was at Monopoly and Scrabble. But one morning, when Dr. Tanner woke me before heading off to work, I noticed a stern look on his face. I also realized that it was 3 hours earlier than when he usually wakes me. You need to watch the news today. No exceptions. I want you to keep the television on all day and pay close attention to it, he stated grimly. I of course complied and watched him exit the room. About 2 hours later, a breaking news segment interrupted the toothpaste commercial I was watching. The title, Human Remnants Found. Two staunch-looking men in suits stood aside one another and began speaking. We are displeased to bring up such unfortunate news this morning regarding our missing child case from earlier this month. One of the men bowed his head while the one speaking shuffled through some papers. He continued. Remains of a body have been found in a garbage bag beneath a highway overpass. The body appears to be that of a child, although not much of it is left. The body has been decapitated and much has been burnt to ash and bone. The screen shifted over to a helicopter view of a freeway. Dozens of police cars gathered near the bottom of a tall overpass. The man's voice could still be heard. Within the bag, police found a junior high school identification card labeled as such. The screen showed the school ID card I'd always kept in my backpack. The plastic was sort of melted away, but my photograph and name were intact. After the two men dismissed themselves, the camera panned over to my parents. They were sitting among reporters. My mother's face held a painful grimace, and my father sulked his head down at his knees. I shut the television off. Dr. Tanner returned home very late. He hurried into the room, unlocked my cuffs, and placed a bottle of fizzing water into my hand. He placed his hands onto my shoulder and smiled. I made you a promise, didn't I? I nodded, tears squeezing their way out of my eyes. You need to make me a promise again, he whispered. He told me that I needed to drink all the water in the bottle. It would help me sleep, and that from here on I am never to tell anyone that I ever met him. I promised. I told you I'm the best school psychologist in the world, didn't I? And he was right. I awoke later that night to find myself lying in the middle of a park, stars shining brilliantly across the night sky. I recognized the park. It wasn't too far from my school. A mile or so down the road, I saw my house. The lights were off inside, but I could make out my father sitting on the steps leading to the front door. I hesitantly called out to him. He lifted his head slowly. But when he saw it was me, he sprang to his feet, ran towards me, arms open, yelling my name. My mother erupted from the house behind him. Dr. Tanner was right. Things have changed, with my family and I. My parents smile more often and treat me lovingly. I could not ask for a more perfect ending. Every now and then I'd see Dr. Tanner on campus walking to and from his office. Rarely do we ever make eye contact, let alone speak to one another, but sometimes he'll shoot me a wink and a smile. I'll always keep my promise to him and pretend I never met him. But there will always be one question forever floating in my mind. Who did Dr. Tanner decapitate and throw off the overpass? Next story. Chef prepared the best Italian food in the city. I've always considered myself fortunate to work for his establishment. Our restaurant, Palermo's Italian Restaurant, has been open for more than 30 years. The owner began the restaurant as a family establishment. He and his brother opened the Italian restaurant together, but a family dispute about the style and direction of the restaurant quickly dissolved the relationship, and the brother left. Chef has owned and operated the restaurant solely for at least 25 years. He was the best. Always cooked and served each dish to perfection. He wore traditional chef coat, which was always crisp and clean. I enjoyed working for him, although my co-workers would disagree. I'm not going to lie, he was an asshole. His perfectionism and incredible culinary abilities transformed him into an egotistical jerk. Plus, since I was a bartender, I only interacted with him when I needed food for my customers. Okay, enough background information. This is the story of my last shift at Palermo's Italian Restaurant. I spent the majority of my afternoon sipping on coffee, cleaning my apartment, and smoking cigarettes. It was a dreary Saturday. Light rain showers were scattered across the sky. I love those days. Actually, I prefer dark, wet afternoons more than sunny days. After browsing my favorite websites, I noticed my shift was approaching. My hours are from 3 to 11. I love tending bar. It's great money for a young adult without a college degree. I work Friday, Monday nights, and go to class Tuesday through Thursday. After a quick shower, I dressed in my work uniform, black non-slick dress shoes, black dress slacks, a black dress shirt, and a solid red necktie. Then I headed into work, ready to make a relatively good amount of money for a man of my age. Little did I know it would be my last day. I arrived at the restaurant a few minutes before my shift. Palermo's Italian restaurant is a large establishment with virtually no parking. On a busy night, customers would normally park at the Regions Bank located next to the restaurant, since parking was limited. The bright neon letters of Palermo's would shine bright red with its insignia of grapes burning bright green. The restaurant is divided into three primary sections. The main dining room separated the bar from the kitchen. The middle room separated the large private celebrations room from the main dining room. It is an old building coupled with old artifacts on the walls with even older tables, booths, and chairs. Palermo's is in desperate need of renovation to its decor. Chef has never updated anything in the establishment. My shift began as every other shift normally does. I filled my ice bin, set up my sinks, stocked the beer cooler and wine cabinets, and all the other necessary steps of opening a bar. Saturday nights were normally slower compared to Friday nights, so it wasn't necessary for me to prepare as if it were a busy night. As the first few hours passed, co-workers and customers began to fill the restaurant, and my bar remained empty. Then he came in. He was a new customer to me. I was trained to view new customers as potential returning customers, so I always tried my best to make sure they would return with their friends. This is the best way to build a clientele. Although the gentleman who walked into my bar was a strange man, something about him didn't seem normal. I had the sense that he was hiding something. "Hi, how are you doing today?" I said with a smile and a welcoming tone. He looked at me for a while without giving a response, staring at me, studying me. After an uncomfortable pause, he spoke. "Whiskey and Coke, tall." "Sure thing," I said, as I began to prepare his drink. I grabbed my mixing tin and a highball glass, scooped the ice into the glass with a mixing tin, and poured an ounce and a half of whiskey into the glass. Next, I filled the drink with Coke from my soda gun. As I was making his drink, I asked, "I don't think I've had the pleasure of serving you before. Is this your first time here?" The man continued to gaze while I set his drink down in front of him. "Yes." I thought to myself, oh great, a quiet asshole. I learned how to respond to different customers. If they are chatty, a good bartender will listen and smile. If they are shy, a good bartender will try to make them talk about themselves and bring them out of their shell. If they are quiet or an asshole, a good bartender will let them drink and stew in their thoughts until the alcohol loosens their tongue, and then indulge into their conversation. Most people do not realize that a good bartender will treat customers as their best friends and slightly mirror their actions. But in their eyes, customers are only clients. We are your unlicensed therapist. We listen to you, we offer a shoulder to cry on, we share your sympathies, but we try to be genuine and not superficial. But the man sitting in front of me was strange. Honestly, he began to creep me out as the day progressed. Hours of the shift began slipping away. I continued to create drinks for the customers on the main floor. A few other patrons came into the bar and I served them all by making them laugh and giving them good service. But the asshole continued to remain sitting at my bar. He never spoke, but he would always watch me. I could feel his eyes peering at me. This continued for hours. He gave me a creepy vibe. I did not like it. As the hours progressed, he would watch my co-workers with the same dedication of which he was giving to me. Eventually, the bar died. My customers left as well as some of my co-workers. But the man remained, staring at me. He was on his fourth drink of the night when he finally began to ask questions. Weird questions. A bit too personal for myself. "How long have you worked here?" he finally asked. For a few years now." "Have you had any problems working here?" he asked. "Yeah, people like you. What the F is your problem?" I thought to myself. "No, not really. Some of my co-workers have, though." The man continued to glare at me, waiting for me to explain further. "Our boss can be a little rough around the edges. Many people find it difficult to work for him, I guess. That's probably why our turnover rate is so high." Now stop asking me these weird questions. Why do I feel as if I'm being interrogated or something? What's your boss like? I told him about Chef, his history and everything that was relative to him and his restaurant. Once I told him about Chef's veal parmesan, though, he became quite interested. Chef makes this fantastic veal parmesan, but it's not on the menu. It's the best food I've ever had. It really is incredible, but he only makes it for himself and the employees here. How often does he make it? Every few months or so, I guess. Everyone here loves it too. He says if we work hard and do well, then he'll make it for us as a treat. Excuse me for a second, I need to go check on something, I said. This man was asking too many weird personal questions about me and my life, and I needed a cigarette. I slipped out the back door and lit up a smoke. Is this guy a stalker or something? Why is he so weird? After a few minutes of clearing my head, I resumed my duties in the bar. Once I opened the kitchen door and strolled through the dining room, I noticed he was gone. A sense of relief washed over me. I walked up to the bar to clean the mess and found $100 bill sitting on the counter. His tab was only $32. He left a damn good tip, but it still made me uncomfortable. The shift ended and I finished cleaning and breaking down the bar. Uncertainty crashed in my mind as I thought about the man. Such a strange man. As I headed out into the parking lot, I noticed him. He was standing next to his vehicle. Oh, he's still here. I immediately jogged toward my truck and drove away. As I drove on the highway, I continued to glare in my rearview mirror, looking to see if anyone was following me. I never saw his vehicle following me, but it was dark. I arrived at my apartment and drank a 12-pack of Stella Artois. I soon fell asleep, drunk as hell. Once I woke up, I had several missed phone calls and text messages, all from my coworkers. I don't know why, but I thought of the man from last night. I learned everything after I heard the voicemails on my phone. As it turns out, Chef was arrested. The man who arrested him was the weirdo from the bar. Apparently, Chef murdered over a dozen of my coworkers over the years, and the veal parmesan was not veal. I don't think I'll ever eat Italian food again.